It's Sunday, and I've been thinking to just share how I manifested my husband Jake, because first of all, I think it's an interesting story. Second of all, he shows up here a lot, so I thought it's cool to kind of let you know where he came from. And third, because I would have loved this information back when I was single in my early to mid 30s. So it's actually a pretty practical trajectory of how I got here, but also it took a lot of personal work that I wish I had known what steps to do and when, and it took me years and years to get through. But I think had I had a YouTuber who was just like, this is how I did it, I could have gotten through it a lot faster. So even though it took me probably, if I'm really serious, it took me like 8 years to manifest him, but you'll see why and why you get to skip over so many of those and probably manifest so much faster if you relate to the things that I had to overcome to call him in. So it's also Sunday, and I just finished my long run. On Sundays, I do my longest run of the week. I'm kind of basically trying to lose about 10 pounds. Not that I don't love my body exactly where it is, I absolutely do, but I just love the challenge of this. I'm trying to lose about 10 pounds that I gained right after we got married. Then we went over to Europe for 3 weeks, and then I came back and I was just I'm basically European now, and I was eating a lot of cheese and bread and drinking wine. And so the lifestyle didn't really fade. And so I ended up gaining about 10 pounds, which now 2 years later, I just feel like getting fitter, getting stronger, getting leaner. I love my body. So it's a perfect place to work from. I'm not doing it from punishing or hating my body at all. I'm just doing it because it is summer. And like we talked about last week, the Saluna mindset of July is just a lot of light, letting go of what you don't need, burning off things that just aren't serving you anymore. This is one of those things for me, and it doesn't really matter if I hit it or not. It's just fun to have the goal of eating really healthy and getting my fitness on track and having a personal goal. It feels really good. I'm going to do our little Sunday reset, and I thought I'd walk us through that as well. It's nothing crazy, nothing super special, but just a fun way to frame this kind of how I manifested Jake talk. So I'll start right now. Just finished the run. Then I went and dipped in the pool, which felt really, really good. Had a smoothie and then took a shower. And now I'm going to apply this. This is the AHA BHA peel from The Ordinary. It is very, very strong. So I'm only going to have this on for about 8 minutes. I take off all my jewelry before I put it on. It's just a chemical peel, and I'm using it for this sun damage and all these freckles, which no matter what I do, just keep coming back here in Texas because there is a lot of sun. We're outside a lot, and I wear a lot of sunscreen, but yeah, I'm just prone to sun damage and discoloration and stuff. So I'm going to apply this. I'm going to set a timer for 8 minutes, and then I'm going to clean the house a little bit. So typically Sundays, Jake and I will do our workouts together apart, whatever's up that day, and then we will clean the house together. But today he's off with a bunch of his guy friends doing some guy time, and so I'm going to clean the house, just take my time, which I find really relaxing. And also, Jake and I work well together, but we also have different ways we like to clean and what we think needs to be cleaned deeper and stuff. So it's kind of nice to just do it my own way. And we do cook a really nourishing meal, and sometimes we have a movie night. And so it's about being together. It's about getting the house reset. There's no hard rules to it. There's no Sunday scaries. In fact, the whole thing is supposed to feel relaxing. It's not like a day of get it all done in a to-do list. It's kind of the opposite of that, actually. Anyway, okay. So how I manifested my husband. Let's go backwards to 2018, so 8 years ago. I was in a relationship I had been in for 8 years. Wow, a lot of eights there. I had been in a relationship for 8 years, and that person and I had a wonderful relationship. It was very collaborative, and we really helped each other grow, especially professionally. But that was kind of the problem, is that we ended up becoming just kind of almost business partners. We were each other's editors for each other's projects. He was a screenwriter, I was a fashion journalist, and so it was just kind of and I was a lifestyle blogger by then, and I had big projects off the ground, and I was in major magazines like Huffington Post and 17 and Cosmo, and so our life just became about our work, and we were also just kind of we'd become friends after 8 years. And also what we needed in relationships really, really changed. And I just kind of went through, I'm sure if you're woo-woo at all, you'll know, I went through my Saturn return. And I started a TBM workshop, a 2B magnetic workshop. I think I did Inner Child. And I started to look around and realize, wow, I am really more of a mother and maternal figure in this life and relationship than I wanted to. And I'm not just talking about the dating, I'm talking about in my work. I was working all day as a freelance writer, marketer, blogger, all the things. And then at night I would go and waitress and bartend. And so I was just working 2 full-time jobs, literally. And it just kind of hit me like a ton of bricks of like, I'm not the woman that I want to be. I want to feel more beautiful. I want to feel more seen. I want to prioritize myself more instead of my relationship, my partner, my job. And I just got to a place where it was like, it was time for a huge, huge change. And I wanted more romance. I wanted more wooing. I wanted more everything. So we went different ways. And to his credit, when I told him like, hey, I think it's time for me to leave this partnership, his response was, you deserve everything in the entire world. You're the most amazing woman in the world to me. So go get what it is that you think that you want. And of course it was painful for both of us. It was really, really hard, but just the fact that he was like, if this isn't what you need and want to be your best, then there's no way I'm going to stand in the way, was just like so eye-opening. So left that relationship and then went into a couple months later, maybe 6 months later, ended up in a relationship that would last 4 years. And again, this is before I'm even thinking about manifesting my dream partner. I'm not putting any work towards that. I had done the inner child workshop and I was thinking about manifesting like a better career. I was not thinking about manifesting a partner, but this part matters. So I'm dating this person and he is someone who really, really reflects everything that happened in my family of origin, the town that I grew up in, like just the structures that were back there, which is that I am hard to love. There was just a message growing up in a small town that I was the weird art girl and that I came from like a bigger city, which was nearby. So I was just like different. I didn't understand the small town mindset. I didn't really like fit in after a couple years. I just wasn't very like, and then I started getting bullied. And so it became clear to me that I didn't belong. And I took that upon myself as if there was like something wrong with me. So that reflected in that next relationship where I had this new freedom. I was living on my own for the very first time and yeah, drawn to this relationship that really made me constantly prove myself. And he would constantly ask me to be different in some way. I was never good enough. He never wanted to get that close. And yet that lasted for like years. It would be like one day I wasn't good enough. He didn't want to spend time with me. Other things were more important and I was being needy. And then the next day he'd be like, you're so important to me. And he was really, really hard to open up. That person was really, really closed off to everybody, very, very emotionally unavailable. So those little like tidbits, those little crumbs of like, you mean so much to me would mean like the world to me. And I would think that they meant, we were on the right track. There was nothing that I thought that I had wanted when I left my 8-year relationship. There was just this like high intensity drama relationship where I was constantly trying to prove myself and literally being told I wasn't easy to love. And I just fully believed it. And so I stayed with him because I thought he's right. And just like he says, I'm very lucky to even have him love me because I'm so hard to love. And then finally, after 4 years of that, it became clear to me that that is probably not the truth and not the case. It became clear to me that I was exhausted. I was sick of feeling like I wasn't good enough. I was sick of proving myself to this person who just was never showing up. And my career was getting stronger and stronger. And my friendship circles were getting stronger and stronger. And so it just was like becoming more and more obvious, like, wait a second, what you're saying isn't true. So I started Googling that, watching YouTube videos, doing all the things you do when you think that something could be better in your life. And I realized I was a codependent. And if you know that term, if you've read anything about it, you know that it is a really sneaky, they call it a disease, but kind of an addiction where you really do like at every turn, you put other people first, you put your own needs last, you think that if you can secure other people feeling good, that they'll finally turn and help you. You think if you support other people, they'll finally look at you and be like, oh my gosh, I couldn't have done it without you. How can I repay you? They never do. Because of that dynamic, because you are entering it with like, what can I give you to make you love me? They bleed you dry. And I finally admitted to myself, like, this is big, this is real. And I looked at it through the lens of TBM and saw very much where it came from in my childhood. I looked through it from the lens of therapy. I went to a therapist and she was like, yep, this is going on for you. Like there was no way I could avoid. I was in codependent patterning. So if you're having the patterns of codependency, you are putting other people before yourself. You think that you need other people to love you, to feel important, and you will do things outside of your comfort zone to get their love and approval, which is like help them more than you help yourself, sacrifice yourself. Like if you're in those things, start looking around. It might be codependency. So obviously I was using TBM to really get to the bottom of the childhood where it came from. I had a therapist at the time I absolutely loved. She would tell me like she saw it. She would be so brutally honest. God, I loved her. She just was like, bro, like, do you not see what I see? And I was like, no, I don't see what you see. And she'd spell it out for me. And it was just so good to have such radical honesty that I couldn't give myself. And then she taught me how to give myself that radical honesty. And then finally, when my therapy with her ended, I went to Codependence Anonymous, which is a support group for codependents. And it works a lot like AA, which is a 12-step program. It works with codependency like it's an addiction, and it was the most powerful thing I could have possibly done. I did 90 meetings in 90 days. I was absolutely obsessed with the work because I realized I couldn't quite trust my thinking of what I thought was right in relationships especially, and towards the person who was my partner at that time. And also, at the time, I was like reading every book about attachment styles and relationships and blah, 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 just to try to fix that relationship. And after a while, I was like, hang on, they're not doing any of that. Nor is me reading about it helping in fixing the relationship. Like at some point, I'm just gonna have to admit, I don't want an avoidant. So all of this is happening. I go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I commit to the 12 steps. I worked the program like my life depended on it, because it did. Even in that, it still took another full year for me to finally leave that relationship. So there you go. I'm gonna leave this portion right here. I'm gonna go clean a little bit. This needs to come off soon, but from that place, I had been in a relationship I thought was okay, kind of started to realize I wanted more for myself, I wanted more for my life, I wanted to feel a different way, and that my relationship was keeping me from doing that because it kept me in a role of kind of like a caretaker. And then I broke free of it, but my patterns were so strong, I went straight to the deepest, harshest, most real version of all my wounds and trauma, which was someone who made me feel like I was hard to love, that I wasn't good enough, that I needed to constantly prove myself and work harder and harder while they just took and I just gave. Then I found the work of codependency, and I started to really look at my wounds and myself and my patterns and the behaviors and what happened because of those behaviors. For instance, every time he'd call in the middle of the night and want to like come over for a long weekend together, and I would always say yes, even though I had other plans, even though my work was in the way. And I would constantly accommodate, and then I would see what happened every time I said yes to those kinds of things, and how it put my life on hold and how I didn't feel good about myself after. Codependency work really helped me take a lens to that, and I had to look so hard at it. So I'm gonna go do the other things on my Sunday, and then we'll talk about what happened after I finished the 90 meetings in 90 days. Washed off the mask, and now I'm putting this on. It's the hypochlorous acid daily facial spray from Medicube. It's like a relief calming spray, and I just think since I just did like a chemical peel, I want to just put something that's going to make sure there's not like bacteria growing in there, and this is really good at helping kill all that bacteria. And then I'm going to put a lightweight moisturizer on. And then I'm going to clean this bathroom. As someone who worked as a housekeeper when I was a kid, I grew up on a lake, and one of my first jobs was being a housekeeper for the people who had like just weekend cabins. My mom set me up with like her friends who would just come out from the city on the weekends, and so I would go clean their house during the weekdays when they weren't there. Here's a tip: clean top to bottom. So always like dusting before you sweep, and doing your mirrors and stuff before you do your counters, and do your floors last. So it's always top to bottom. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, and I'm about to go run some errands. This isn't a Sunday where I have to redo my nails. I just did them last Sunday, but I'll redo them next week, and I think I'm gonna go for like a coffee kind of color. Sunday resets in the afternoon are first getting anything done, and then typically Jake and I will meet up and do something fun. He's doing a 21-day sober challenge right now. I am not. I'm having a glass of wine when I finish Perfect Match probably tonight or tomorrow, so that's kind of my little like weekly treat. I don't drink very much anyway, so I decided not to do the full challenge. Also, I have this thing where the moment you tell me that I shouldn't do something, or the moment I promise that like I'm not going to for 21 days, I want it more. So I decided, yeah, that's probably a recipe for disaster. So I did my 90 and 90 meetings with Coda. What that did was open up this huge possibility that maybe we were both wrong. My partner at the time and me, thinking that 1, I was hard to love, and B, this was, and 2, this is how love should feel and show up. It was just so familiar. And the work in Coda, in therapy, and the inner child work in TBM all helped me realize where I had gotten that from in childhood childhood. In adulthood, that's exactly what I sought in adult relationships because I wanted to heal that part of my inner child. I wanted to finally prove that I was worth loving and that I was, good enough to be chosen. And that's not how to do it. The way to do it is not through convince a partner to love you or to change someone who is avoidant. And I think I know I did, and I know a lot of other women do. They go down these rabbit holes of trying to fix their partner. In fact, I spent a lot of time with one of my best friends. We would go on walks, hikes, all these sorts of things. And we would just talk about all the things we were learning in these self-help books about relationships and how we were seeing the wounds of our boyfriends that could be better and how to fix them instead of just leaving them and having these grown men do their own personal work. I think also because when I was 17 and went through chemo, I had this sort of I guess you could call it a chip on my shoulder, but it was more like a story that was attached to me that, oh my God, everybody worked so hard to save my life. I owe it to everybody to be this super compassionate, loving, I need to fix the world and I need to fix other people and I need to give back at all costs. And so some of my career was even in nonprofits. I think that was part of it. I just could not be selfless enough and I didn't deserve what I wanted unless I earned it and overexhausted myself. Once I got out of that deep work, I was still in the relationship back and forth. It was very on again, off again with that partner. And it was just really, really, really painful. But I finally started to realize, first of all, my lifestyle was helping hide the problems in the situationship. So for me, that was that I lived alone and he didn't. And so my apartment kept becoming a refuge for him where he would just show up for days on end and just kind of dominate my life. And I was you know what? This isn't working for me. I need to go and have roommates. I need to live with people again. I need to have a sense of community and I need to have a more fun life. So I left my apartment in Koreatown, Los Angeles that I loved so much. It was so beautiful. It was such a perfect little haven to do all that work alone, and moved in with a friend into a beautiful house in mid-city along Miracle Mile, Wilshire area, and just had the best time. And it was such an awakening experience, first of all, to live with such an amazing friend who, even now, she just wows me every single day, but she made me feel loved, she made me feel welcome, she made me feel like life was fun. And so that relationship, with all the work and with living in this place where I couldn't hide him and shelter him in our toxic relationship anymore, it started to become so unattractive to me. Just so incredibly unattractive. And I think that's one of the biggest parts of the manifestation process that happened accidentally for me, which is that my old patterns and programs became so intolerable and unattractive and annoying, and just I couldn't stand it. And I think that's a really, really important part of the manifestation process because it's part of the identity shift of I'm someone who needs to chase and earn love into someone I'm in a life where I am loved by friends and family and I have a lot of possibilities and I'm not locked into this one mindset. The other thing that started to happen at that time is I started taking walks through our beautiful neighborhood and listening to a lot of affirmations. I was using the Superhuman. I don't know what she calls it now, but it's made by Mimi Bouchard, I think is her name. And just really visualizing more of what I wanted. And it became clear that I was unhappy in that past situationship relationship, even though it had been going on for years, even though it was supposedly so important to both of us, even though he supposedly cared so much. And I decided to leave the relationship. And at the same time, he was kind of negging me on to would say things I think you should just date other people, which he was saying to push me and make me kind of beg for no, let's whatever. Finally, one day I took him up on it. Finally, one day I said, you know what? I think you're right. And I think I'm going to do that. And I waited a couple weeks. I don't think he believed me. I don't think I believed me. And finally, I did. I met someone and I went on a date. And the date didn't, he was just an LA actor type and it didn't really go anywhere, but it was so fun. It was so fun to dress up and go out and be, kind of courted and have this guy, take me to dinner and want to impress me. And I was I have been missing this. I love a first date. I have always loved a first date. They don't intimidate me. They just make me excited to get dressed up and get to know somebody. And I love them. And I was just you know what, this is what I want to do. And so I told him, and he was, of course, very upset and said that clearly our relationship had meant nothing to me the whole time, which was just to try to get me to kind of come crawling back, and it didn't work. I went on a couple more dates and realized, I think there's a little bit of quiet time that needs to happen here. So I went silent for about 5-6 months of just not dating, not looking around, just having fun with my friends. And of course, that's the time when you do meet people when you're out, but I just kind of stuck true to I want to be on my own for a little bit. Then the time came, I was I think I'm ready for a relationship. And what happened first had to be an ego death. I had to really look at, and this was going to be a prescriptive, how do I manifest my husband, my person? I was going through the TBM formula. I was really sticking true to like my growth through CODA. I was really like loving my life. And the first thing I did was first